that's one thing that is really important. So what I'm talking about is essentially swadharma, that is your own dharma, yeah? And your that's the term that Krishna uses in the Gita, where he says, better your own dharma, your swadharma, done in a faulty fashion than somebody else's really well. Yeah, this is really important. And you are the only person that can really figure out and can feel what is your dharma, yeah, your swadharma. Because the divine wants to only impart it to you and experience it through you. That's why you are here. So don't let anybody tell you God doesn't want to play American football. That's out. You got to choose something else. Because nobody else can know what the divine wants to do through you. This can only be known through you. There is a special frequency that each being has with the divine.
Yes. That's the kind of point I wanted, I think, to clarify with you, because it's exactly correct. When you're talking about divine purpose, it's not like, well, my purpose has to be equal in fashion to Nelson Mandela's. It's like, whatever your thing is, that is a valid expression of you, you know, and I think that's, you know, an important kind of understanding to have when we're talking about divine purpose. But you also talk about formal practice, and, you know, in this current age, right, there's this, especially with Neo-Advaita, there's this idea that, you know, nothing is necessary, right? You know, a kind of misappropriation of Advaita terms, that you can kind of like, that, you know, like you say, like, just kind of wait and something will come through you. But, you know, you very much, and throughout your life, have embraced formal practice. You talk in your book about formal practice being necessary, and then a kind of watching and awaiting, or allowing something to come through. How do the two kind of things kind of meet in the middle?
Okay, so when you look at the Taittiriya Upanishad, there is this so-called Pancha kosha teaching, which is the teaching of the 5 layers, yeah, which is one of the most important passages in yoga. And in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, he says in the Sutra 131 that the obstacles of yoga express themselves in body, breath, and mind. Yeah. So he says, as anxiety and depression in the mind, as a fidgety body, and an unsteady breathing pattern. Yeah. So that's really important. Yeah. And when you look at, you know, modern psychology, something like Bessel van der Kolk's "The Body Knows the Score." Is it? That's the title of the book. I think
keeps the score. Keeps the score.
Keeps the score.
Body keeps the score.
The body keeps the score. Thank you. And there is very much the idea that, you know, if you have a traumatic experience or any type of experience, it seeds simultaneously into body, breath, and mind. Yeah. So that means if you want to, let's say, let go of your past or get rid of your past traumas, limitations, you need to work simultaneously on body, breath, and mind. What I'm talking about is asana, pranayama, yogic meditation, because asana is the technique to cleanse conditioning out of your body, pranayama to do it out of the breath strata, and yogic meditation releases conditioning from the mind. Yeah. So then when you do those 3 things, you have done it to a certain extent, things suddenly become possible. Yeah. Now, what exactly becomes possible is that you find that under body, breath, and mind, there are 2 deeper stratas, which in the Upanishad are called Vijnanamaya kosha and Anandamaya kosha. That is, let's say, deep knowledge sheath or super knowledge sheath and ecstasy sheath. Yeah. And in the Yoga Sutra, Patanjali calls them objective and objectless samadhi. Yeah. Now, unfortunately, in modern spirituality, there is only this focus on objectless samadhi. That is, we only are to meditate on consciousness, awareness, on the formless absolute. Yeah, but it's very interesting because if you look, if you go, let's say, for a second into Tantrism, that's actually the male aspect of spirituality. That stands for Shiva. Yeah, and if you look at Shiva, it's sort of it's a male deity that sits motionless on Mount Kailash in minus 50 degrees, and he doesn't do anything. Yeah. Whereas it's actually the female aspect of the divine Shakti who rolls out and maintains this entire creation. And it's her who engages in the divine play, in the lila. Yeah. But similarly to the Abrahamic religions, where we have, for example, in Catholicism, we have the Father and the Holy Ghost and the Son, and they're all three men. Yeah. But similarly in Indian spirituality, it's and they stand for a solid state spirituality. Yeah, which is very similar to Indian spirituality, where you have Shiva or also Rama. There's sort of these immovable characters. Yeah, similarly to consciousness is also immutable. Yeah, but if you look at the world, if you look at our bodies, if you look at the universe, the way how galaxies move, and the way what DNA does, how dynamically evolution is happening, and at everything what Shakti does, it's actually a dynamic play. And that's where I want to bring Alfred North Whitehead in, whose work was basically dedicated to showing that God is a process, that God is not a solid state. Yeah. Now, there is two aspects to the divine, which we call God Transcendent and God Immanent. In India, they're called Shiva and Shakti. Now, the solid state spirituality, that is Shiva. It's pure consciousness, and it's this immutable, eternal, infinite awareness. Yeah, but there's a second aspect of the divine which we have lost. Yeah, and that is the so-called God immanent. It's feminine spirituality. It's process spirituality. It's that God is not a noun, but God is a verb. It's an ongoing process. She is eternally rolling out the universe, and the universe is not a solid state. Yeah, but it's actually like a dynamic evolution, and it's not wrong to participate in it. In fact, she wants you to participate in it, and you have a particular role to play in this game, in this lila, in this play. Yeah. Now, the bhakti, the devotion, is actually a form of playful interaction with the Divine Mother, I would say. Yeah. To actually find out, what does she want you to do? What is your role in the play? Yeah. And because she is a process, she is not a solid state, it's actually not finally determined. There are certain nature gifts, which she has given Mozart the divine ear. Yeah. She has given Martin Luther King the ability to be an eloquent speaker, but everybody has a different gift. Yeah. So the question is, can you actually take that gift and turn it into something? Yeah. And when you do that, she's looking over your shoulder and she says, yeah, go for it. What can you actually do with it? She is actually thrilled to see how far you can go with it. Yeah. And because she is a process, she's not a solid state, she doesn't actually know exactly how far you're going to take it. And then comes the thrill, when you feel like the hair is standing because she's watching you, and it's actually like, she may be amazed how far you go with it.
So I suppose, what you're saying is much more of a tantric approach to yoga rather than an ascetic one. In an ascetic one, drawing back from nature and the world and saying, well, there's the gunas, and the problem is the gunas, and everything is impure. And what we want to do is kind of, in a Platonic way, withdraw ourselves from that, and rather say, well, the material nature. And very much in your book, you talk very eloquently about science and homeostasis and scientific processes being very much a kind of interplay of divine purpose and relation, right? I mean, this current idea of materialism as well creeping in, that everything is random. And I think you speak very well in saying how, how can it be random? This, 0.111 degree of change in the temperature, then you wouldn't have these beings, right? That everything has a very, very developed and subtle consciousness behind it, right? But on the other hand, I mean, I think we can easily take this as a kind of injunction just to go back into the world and just it's a slippery slope as how to keep ourselves in a reflective state, as well as interacting with the divine play, because I was doing very nicely divine play in my 20s, like drinking and partying and interacting with the world. And how does that differ from the kind of divine play that you're talking about, right, where we're interacting with nature in a kind of different manner?
Yes, and so I admit that it's not easy. Yeah, so it's not like you just follow the whims of your mind. That's the trap, So it certainly you need to differentiate between fulfilling the will of the divine, which is there is, you can say it's the voice of the heart. Yeah, what is the voice of the divine? It's the voice of the heart. You can say it's the voice of stillness, because there is no ego within it. Yeah, and obviously it's there is a being in the zone like character quality attached to it. And there is a quality attached to it in which there is absence of internal dialogue. Yeah. So there is not this voice saying, am I really doing it? Maybe I shouldn't be doing it. Maybe I should be doing something else. On the other hand, and so because, the question is that one needs to ask oneself is, am I doing my swadharma or am I doing somebody else's? Yeah, that's really important.
And that's the $1,000,000 question, really, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. And then the other thing is, it must be in alignment with universal dharma. Yeah. So it must be constructive. That's what I'm saying, because what the Divine Mother does is obviously constructive. For example, you can see that as soon as life started on the planet, biodiversity grew. So it can't be something in which we are destructive towards life in general.
Yeah, so there's some kind of relation to looking to the outside as well. It's not just simply a look within. It's relating one inner process to some outer process, right? But also constructive is a kind of ambiguous term, because many people can see constructive in different ways, right? Like, how do you know whether what you're doing is furthering the life force or somehow diminishing it, even if because you may feel like you're furthering. I'm sure that certain people drilling for oil in the Middle East feel that they're furthering the force of life in the world, right? It's but I can see that there's some kind of relation between the inner process to the outer one, which is not immediately yogic, right? I mean, it's the precedent is generally withdraw or neti, we kind of step back and push away the outer world as false, as untrue.
Yes, I have come to the conclusion that there's a term, it's called sky religion, and it's opposed to the term earth-based spirituality. Yeah, and in sky religion, the goal of spirituality is either put into heaven, where it's ruled by a male god, or even further away into nirvana or emptiness and nothingness. Yeah, and when you look at historically how these religions developed, they developed as a tool of coercion and domination with an attempt to destroy earth-based spirituality, indigenous spirituality, and often spirituality in which matter, the body, and the female, played a large role. And so suddenly we have a spirituality in which matter, in which the body is seen as an obstacle, the material world is seen as an obstacle, and woman is seen as an obstacle. And so the male sadhaka has to be careful that he's not, how is it called, contaminated by women.
Right.
You know, this whole, there is, of course, a very powerful political agenda behind it, which sort of like comes together with patriarchalic society, stratification of society, and development of standing armies, development of agriculture, etc. So I would question all of that. I would think that all of this so-called ascetic sky spirituality has actually ultimately motives which come from domination, coercion, political rule, really.
I mean, because I think it's spirituality, clear that we got.
Because spirituality is here right now. There is no dichotomy between, look, matter is crystallized spirit. That's what I want to say. There is no unspiritual matter. All matter is divine. Every spot on the surface of this planet is a sacred site. And the divine is in every being. There is no dichotomy between those two things. I know in the last few thousand years they tried to explain to us that spirituality is one thing and a material life is another. They're both the same.